For 8 seasons, Archie Bunker always put himself first. The shouting, the slamming doors, always his way. Then, one quiet Saturday evening, he made a choice nobody expected. He stopped screaming, he threw his hands down, and he chose his family. A sudden emotional moment that changed all in the family forever. But let's go back to the moment the trap was set. Archie had his long-awaited fishing trip packed. Barney was waiting at the door. He was seconds away from freedom. Then Edith drops a bombshell. She arranged an entire wedding for a lonely elderly couple, right in his living room, without even asking him. Watch closely here. You can see the shift in the room. Archie had worked a grueling week of physical labor, and in his mind, this weekend was his only escape. Now, he feels cornered. To understand Archie's frustration, we have to look at America in the late 1970s. The economy was struggling, inflation was soaring, and working-class men felt the walls closing in. Back then, families gathered around the television because these struggles were so relatable. We saw our own survival, our own financial anxieties, reflected in that small living room. In this Season 8 episode, Unequal Partners, television moved away from idealized family portraits. Instead, it carefully documented the complex pressures facing ordinary households. But let's look closer at Edith. She hadn't just invited strangers into the house. She was responding to a very real crisis of the 70s, the sudden neglect of the elderly. Most viewers miss this, but Edith represents something profound here. In an era where society was becoming faster and colder, she was the moral anchor holding on to basic human decency. Jean Stapleton's performance is breathtaking. She doesn't play Edith as a naive victim. There is a quiet, fierce determination in the way she sets that wedding table. Archie, on the other hand, isn't necessarily being cruel. He is reactive. He looks around and feels like his last sanctuary, his own home, is being taken over without his consent. Have you ever felt like the world is demanding too much from you, and you just want to say no? Carol O'Connor captures that exact exhaustion, hiding it under a layer of loud complaints. The script carefully balances this domestic standoff. It reveals the uncomfortable truth that in a long marriage, doing the right thing often requires a painful personal sacrifice. Here's where everything changes. The tight-set design of the bunker living room forces them into each other's spaces. There is nowhere for Archie to hide from Edith's silent plea. He stands by the threshold, his coat on, his boots laced. One foot is already outside, yet his eyes remain fixed on the white cloth Edith is smoothing over the table. The pressure builds. Barney is honking outside. The clock is ticking. The bait is ready. Archie's ultimate escape is literally fading away. His hand grips the brass knob. One step to be free, or stay and surrender to the woman he loves. Look at O'Connor's face. The tight jaw, the slight blink of the eyes, the way his shoulders slowly drop an inch. The actor shows us the defeat before the character even admits it. For one long, breathless second, the entire scene freezes. It felt as if the entire studio audience held its breath at that exact moment. Then the crash. The heavy fishing gear hits the floor. Go ahead without me, Barney. He gave in. He actually gave in. He sits heavily in his armchair, performatively scowling, trying to maintain a shred of authority in a room where he just surrendered his power. Do you remember watching this live back in 1977? If this particular season holds a special place in your memory, Share your thoughts with us in the Community tab. When the wedding party arrives, the episode shifts into something much larger than a domestic sitcom. It becomes a reflection on loneliness in America. These elderly folks, with their quiet vulnerability, represented a generation where many felt they were being left behind by the post-war economic boom. Watch closely here. Look at how Edith welcomes them. She doesn't just offer her home, she offers her heart, validating a generation that society deemed a financial burden. And then we see Archie. He doesn't just tolerate them, he begrudgingly starts helping to arrange the chairs. The visual contrast is stunning. Here is a man who spent years shouting at the world, now silently carrying a wooden chair so an elderly stranger can sit down. That is where the writing shows its true subtlety. Moments like this offered a brief respite from the anxieties of the era, focusing instead on a basic, shared level of human connection. We're dedicated to preserving the stories and television history that shaped our lives. If you appreciate this deep dive, consider subscribing to Join Our Living Room. As the vows are spoken, Archie sits quietly in the background. The script cleverly avoids giving him a sudden, unrealistic conversion. He is still Archie. He stays in his corner, his expression unreadable, but his quiet gaze never leaves the couple. The performance tells us that he didn't need to change his mind to understand his wife's heart. When Edith looks over at him, there is only a soft smile. It is a long, steady gaze across the room, a silent acknowledgement of a lifetime of shared compromises. It is this complex, reluctant love that keeps all in the family so alive today. They weren't perfect, but they showed us how to stay human.